Why do you believe that the average citizen needs to be way more prepared than they currently are?
Oh man, because we saw it. Because we fucking saw it. The concrete jungle, especially. Okay, this is kind of like the gift of foresight of I don't know, having lived in shitty places my whole life, and watched these things kind of catch fire sometimes. I started seeing indicators that we were headed for some like really kind of like rough crime stuff about, like 2018, 2019. So that's when I started writing Concrete Jungle, and it got rejected by every major publishing house in the world, whatever kind of shit. And I kind of actually forgot about it until I woke up and like the George Floyd riots were going on, or whatever we want to call those, the BLM Summer of Love for 2020.
The mostly peaceful riots where they did $1 billion were mostly peaceful protests where, in fairness, let me just give the disclaimer, there was millions of people that were protesting peacefully during the day. And the couple 100,000, couple tens of thousands that turned into shitheads at the end of the evening and decided to burn it all down, they killed a couple hundred people and they did $1 billion worth of property damage. So mostly peaceful turned into real shitty real fast. Real fast,
right. Well, man, people were caught off guard by that shit. Like your average American citizen was like really stunned. I mean, they were fucking like, people were terrified in their houses, and just prior to that, COVID having like basically run us out of guns and ammo because everybody bought everything up. I mean, people were like really scared shitless there, and that wasn't that long ago, and we didn't actually solve the problem. Like that could happen again this summer. That could happen pretty much as soon as they flip the switch and decide to. So that was like indicator number one that like the average American needs to be a hell of a lot more prepared than they already were. COVID actually should have been the lockdowns, all that crazy shit. That should have been indicator number two. That could have been a whole lot worse. I mean, if that had actually been like a very lethal disease that had killed, 15, 20% of the population, we would be in a much different situation already. And then, man, the hits basically just keep on coming and have kept on coming ever since. I was just reading, actually before we came in the podcast, one of the biggest electricity suppliers in the Northeast, so up in like Connecticut, Vermont, has just said that they don't have enough natural gas to run through the winter. Like, that's where we're at. Texas's power grid, I think one of the things that used to be the most powerful grid in the world, like it got its ass kicked by like a relatively simple storm 2 years ago. And even this summer in Dallas and in Austin, both, there was concerns. There was like blackout warnings, just like California's had for years now. Like, hey, crank your AC up to like 78 because if everybody doesn't do that, like we're gonna lose it. We're gonna lose the grid. So we're teetering right on the cusp of all these like, they're not like Armageddon, like meteors strike the Earth. We're teetering right on the edge of all these little disasters that are entirely possible. So yeah, man, people I think really need to get it together.
I was talking to somebody who would probably think that I'm a bit of an alarmist or a conspiracy theory, or he would laugh at me for reading your book, Concrete Jungle.
Yeah.
And I go, look, man, remember how frustrated and people were over toilet paper? I don't know why that became the product du jour of like, there's a run on toilet paper. He's like, well, yeah, that was kind of crazy. And I'm like, okay, now do food. Like, just imagine COVID kills 1% or 10% of the population instead of 0.01%. And do you think a single fucking person shows up to stock the shelves at Albertsons? Do you think if there's a 1 in 10 chance of dying from COVID, any trucker is like, yeah, let me go unload a bunch of, food in front of a bunch of strangers? Like, no. What happened with toilet paper? Now, if all of a sudden you do milk, cheese, baby formula, you're about. I read an article the other day from who is it from? Warrior Poet Society. I like some of their online content.
Yeah, he's legit. I like that dude.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. They sent out a blog the other day of like society is basically about 9 meals away from falling apart. You're a parent. I'm a parent. If something happens where I couldn't feed my kids for 3 days, how desperate and homicidal or suicidal do I get if I'm looking at my starving children? We're only 9 meals away from like society going pretty crazy.
You're exactly right, man. I mean, that's always the point I bring up to people too. Is like, if your children were actually like starving to death, like what would you do to prevent that? Because I would do some terrible fucking savage shit. I would eat the fucking neighbors. I'll be straight about that. Like that's what I would do. And most people are actually hardwired that way, whether they think it or not. So, yeah, you take food out of the equation, people will turn, absolutely feral.
You know, I think it was, I can't remember if it was in your book or in one of the podcasts I was talking to you where you were like, hey, you know, it's an interesting thing when the supply chain breaks down. It breaks down for everybody, including drug addicts. You know, I live in Vegas right now. We have a house in LA, so I'm in LA a lot. You know, there's a lot of drug addicts in LA and Vegas. Like that's just whether it's fentanyl or meth or whatnot. If all of a sudden you break down the supply chain of drug addicts, they get real violent, real fast, going door to door looking for prescription drugs or whatever the case may be. Like people just don't think about this because we live in the freest, safest country that's ever existed in human history. Yeah, we got some problems, but like we've all been lulled into this kind of false sense of security. So what if you had to take a gamble? What do you think goes first? Do you think it's fuel? Do you think it's food? Do you think it's electricity? What do you think regionally? You know, we're here in Nevada, or you're out there in Oklahoma. What do you think breaks down first on a regional level that you're like, oh shit, yeah, my books ended up being a little you're a little bit of a prophet there.
Backing that up one step too, think about not just the fentanyl and the cocaine. Think about cigarettes and alcohol.
Oh,
man, you want to see some angry people? Like, take all the smokes out of, whatever fucking county. And how far is Las Vegas from a tobacco field? About 900 miles.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bad day out. But yeah, dude, I think you're exactly right. I think regionally it becomes a different thing. And it's obviously a little bit hard to predict exactly what goes where. The biggest problem you guys have in the West is water. There's some pretty good studies going around out there too about how the Western United States can support about 1/10 of its actual population if we don't have stuff like sufficient fuels to run electricity, to do air conditioning, refrigeration, move all this shit around, as well as just the problems with like Lake Mead and what's the one up the other reservoir right above that. You guys are on the cusp with some very bad problems right there. As far as everybody else. That's a tough one. I really thought fuels this summer. When diesel got over $5 a gallon, I was very, very worried. Because that impacts everything else, too. That impacts your delivery cost, your drivers, all that shit.
Yeah.
So that, I feel like I'm actually kind of amazed that hasn't, spiraled us into a depression already. The East Coast now is down to a 20-day supply of diesel, which is a huge problem for them. If the diesel ever stops, we're totally screwed. We're hosed completely.
Yeah. People don't understand. If you shut down basically 2 ports in Southern California, Long Beach and San Pedro or whatever, you're like 80% of the goods that come into the southwest region of America come from semi-trucks, which come from boats. All that stuff run from diesel. Look, I'm all about a green future. I want the environment to be here for my kids, and we really need diesel fuel.
Right.